virus and it will cause chaos in the UK among the African population. They will riot and as a result it will give way and rise to events in South Africa. Do you think the mass shooting that took place in America recently where a white person is supposedly to have shot blacks and then suddenly in South Africa we have virtually a day or two apart a white person being filmed urinating on a black person's bag? At a time when the communists in South Africa have gutted the country, bringing the masses to a state of total desperation. This is when the communists are going to push. China and Russia will be behind a lot of what we see taking place. The seer mentioned it would be Russia and China behind the wave of immigration into Europe and that migration crisis has not started.
It will pick up speed now with the wheat and famine now knocking at the door.
The snake's head the seer could not see in Rhodesia. I have always believed it was China. China is playing a huge role here. So how do these Western governments counter the communist infiltration of their media, think tanks, groups? Well, you expose it. You expose something on live TV to discredit the mainstream media and then the media collapses. At the same time, due to the collapse, you have the entire West who have been told that these vaccines pushed by the government are deadly. Then the people call for free elections and you install governments who are pro-free speech, pro-choice. This is where the media collapse comes in. It is a way to flush out and take back control via fascism. Do not be surprised if you see President Trump come back. The only way to play the communist at his own game is to do the same as he does and then expose it. Right now the exposing has not taken place, but South Africa is going to play a role here. It is where I saw Cyril on the podium alone on the stage. The communist agitation in Britain could not come at a worse time.
This is where the media blackout will come from in Britain the seer spoke about.
They will have to block all their media to prevent the communists' continual agitation. Their hands will be tied with so many issues, it will be a last resort. This monkeypox thing will also take its toll, probably in France first. The communists there will push and say this is totally racist to call blacks monkeys. Do you remember in South Africa just about 4 or 5 years back when the EFF were destroying stores because H&M stores had put a black child in a t-shirt that said cheeky little monkey? All the t-shirt said was cheeky little monkey and it caused a storm in South Africa. Now imagine in Europe them calling this virus monkeypox and saying it is spread from blacks from Africa. It is not going to go down well. The communists will capitalize on this. They will use it to cause chaos and it will not go down well for us in South Africa. The agitation of the blacks in Europe is really to push through the revolution in South Africa by bringing back the racial thing to the foreground.
There is going to be a revolution in South Africa. They have said it all the time, wearing you out, making you become numb to their threats.
Then when you least expect it, the electricity issues, the water issues, the food issues, work issues, grant issues, all these things will play a huge role with the coming revolution.
This is why I say all the time, wake up.
The Rainbow Nation was an illusion sold to you by the same actors who 1 minute care for you and the next minute throw you to the dogs. Did you see Bonehead in Ukraine? Sorry, this voice mixes up vowels every now and again. I mean Bono the musician from the rock band U2. Funny how Bonehead used to also do concerts and music about South Africa, free Nelson Mandela, but never once did he ever come out about the destruction of South Africa nor the murders of farmers. These artists, both actors and musicians, are nothing more than tools of the communists to subvert nations. He does not give a damn about the Ukrainians, that is simply to convince them to keep on fighting to their deaths. The more they fight, the more the lobbyists get to send weapons, making money and getting America into another war, again all designed to weaken America from within. Remember the plot of the communists, from the decolonizing of Africa to South Africa handing over, was for the destruction and ultimate destruction of America. It was a plot not against South Africa but a plot against the West, namely to destroy Europe and America.
with Europe now not reliant on its colonial wealth which it was entitled to because they built up the countries.
Yes, gold was in those countries, but it took the Europeans to point it out and show the people how to mine it. See, Nelson Mandela was really for America's internal race relations. Whites in South Africa never had racial tension with the blacks, they had racial tensions with communist blacks. I never saw or experienced any racism in the old South Africa, everyone respected each other and we did our best to not offend each other.
There was more respect. Today there is more racism.
With the communists pushing Mandela into power, the West looked on and thought, well, if they could do it, then we could do it. So they became ultra-liberal. Obama, a communist, then popped on the scene, and before we know it, Libya was bombed and the first migrants hit Europe. Now the Europeans were not going to argue about taking in millions of Africans for fear of looking like racists in the eyes of America. How could they stand up to Obama only to be called out? You know, time is a funny thing, years roll round so fast. It took just 14 years from Mandela becoming president to Obama taking place. It was Mandela who paved the way for the Americans to accept multiculturalism, and Europe was not going to not allow those migrants into their lands without having some proof of it working out. Now that South Africa is no longer needed with the racial tension being stoked in Europe with this monkey business, expect a revolution to come to a head. The migrants let into Europe by the Green People's parties, NGOs and charities, and pushed by the Church on humanitarian grounds, is paving the way for Europe to become destabilized during the chaos with Russia. Governments battle to fight wars in foreign lands, let alone fight wars in their backyards and also on their home turf. This is the communist plan, destabilize European countries internally through the pushing of migrants. Then creating a food and financial crisis that they have no more aid or financial support because the state is poor and weak. Then stoke the racial tension as you go to war with Russia, and how do you fight wars while your dam is empty? Now with the third world in a state of famine, you then push for more migrants to get to Europe. The real migration wave is about to hit Europe, millions upon millions more will flee to Europe. The border fences are up. The migrants this time will be greeted by armed men patrolling their borders with this heightened tension with Russia, and as a result they will be shot, and then the German twins arrived. The Europeans will not trust this wave of migration at a time of war with Russia. While the West is weakened, China will make their move on Taiwan. Not only that, they will push the stoking of issues in southern Africa. The seer mentioned both India and China headed for South Africa. There is a reason for this. It tells us, if you read between his lines and his vision, India was no longer on the west side. So Western governments now have so many fires to put out, they are in a state of chaos, all done on purpose, by design, and it did not start yesterday. This is a long plan in the making. The subversion of the past two generations through film, media, radio and every conceivable way, along with false doctrines now lapped up as religions such as the Big Bang Theory, the theory of evolution. If you have a hard time dealing with these theories or the fact that they are theories, why do you not go look up who was behind all these theories? And if you do a little digging, surprise surprise, you will find out they are Freemasons or Jesuits or both. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a long plan in the making. The West is going to have so much internal chaos, they will not be able to have a war with Russia at a time their populations are revolting with the higher costs of living, inflation, food crisis. The international communists need America folded up, they need it wrapped up, they need it to be nothing but a relic of the past with its constitution and amendments. Those things stand in the way of a total new world order. At the heart of this, is the survival of money and finances. The New World Order is nothing new, it is the old Babylonian system of finance, usury. America from the start has been enslaved, the people just do not know it. This leads me into the next section about the firemen and the laws of money. See, most Americans believe their 1776 war was won. It is true the Americans won the battle, but they lost the war. The real war was about who controlled them, and the old biblical saying is correct. The borrower is always slave to the lender. Americans were slave to their central bank under King George, they had no control of their money. The fight was for control. Never confuse battles for wars. The battle was won, the war was lost. At the end of the war, when America was poor and bankrupt, they had to go back to the same Bank of England and borrow finances, they were once again the slave of the lender. Ever since then America has been in a war of who controls their finances, ruthless men control their Federal Reserve, all part of the New World Order. Now the fireman has to be careful. This is a story of brave firemen who did their jobs well. See, the firemen were always preparing for the great fire, a fire that would rage and engulf everything. They got all their equipment, did all the training, and then one day,